AOC is over in Munich talking like a Democrat should. This is a panel that took place at the Munich Security Conference, which is one of the most important global gatherings for defense and foreign policy leaders. So AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was speaking about populism, but what she said has serious implications for American politics. In this clip we're about to see, she does three important things. She admits that Democrats failed working people. She connects extreme inequality to authoritarianism. And she signals to Europe allies that what she believes is happening under President Trump will not last. Let's play the clip.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you are a Democrat. You are a member of the House of Representatives. Has the left betrayed the people? Has your party betrayed its base?
Yes, what was the name of the individual from your story?
Guido.
Guido. It's funny that you asked this question because...
Is the mic working?
Is the microphone on? Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's funny that you asked this question about Guido because in many ways I relate to him. I share many aspects of his story. I was first elected when I was in 2018, and I was a waitress in New York City. I had no health insurance. I could not pay my rent. And I consistently saw a party that championed special interests, the elite, and a Democratic Party that was very much kind of telling working people that everything was fine when it in fact wasn't. And after I was elected, I remember I was crossing this threshold and there's this closed door meeting of many high-ranking Democratic Party officials, people that you see in the news and all of that. And they derided behind closed doors at that time, a long time ago. They derided many of the populist demands that I had run my campaign on. And I had defeated a 20-year Democratic incumbent that was part of Democratic Party leadership. And they said $15 minimum wage at that time, way too high, too severe. The idea of tuition-free public colleges and universities, too far, expanding health insurance and Medicare, too extreme. And these were all the things that I, as a waitress, had campaigned on and had been major pain points in my life. And then they said, we have to listen to working class people more. And I think that that encapsulates much of the betrayal that the working class in the United States had felt. But we have also come a long way since then, and we have a long way to go. The United States right now is experiencing a political pendulum, and depending, really, the party that is seen most as betraying the working class tends to be the governing party in this moment right now.
She said that when she first entered Congress, high-ranking Democrat officials privately mocked or dismissed the policies she campaigned on. Those policies were the 15 minimum wage, tuition-free public college, which is what I believe, minimum wage, free college, expanding health coverage, exactly what I believe. Those are not fringe demands to working Americans these days. Those are basic cost of living concerns. What she is admitting on an international stage is that many working class voters felt ignored, not just by the Republicans, but by their own party, the Democratic Party. She described a disconnect between party leadership and everyday economic reality, which is what they have now, and they better watch out who they nominate. That matters because populism does not grow in a vacuum. It grows when people believe that neither party is speaking to their financial struggles. So a lot of American viewers, for them, this is a moment of honesty from her. She is saying that the Democratic Party had blind spots. Of course they do. All parties do. The question going forward is whether those blind spots have truly been corrected or whether the frustration remains beneath the surface. It is up to the Democratic Party to show working class people that they are listening and they hear now. That will depend on who they pick as our nominee.
I think one of the connections and relationships that is under discussed, particularly in the security space, is the fact that I believe we're seeing an economy across around the world, including in the United States, that extreme levels of income inequality lead to social instability and drives, in a sense, in authoritarianism, right-wing populism, and very dangerous domestic internal politics. And that is a direct outcome of not just income inequality, but the failure of democracies over decades to deliver. The failure to deliver higher wages, the failure to rein in corporations. You know, the point was just made about antitrust. In the United States, antitrust is such a foundational bedrock value, not just because the ascent of monopolies create the abuse of power in corporations and market power, but there is a level of market concentration and corporate consolidation where a massive company can get so big that its consolidated power can rival that of nation states. And democracies, we have elected leaders. And in massive corporations that then begin to consume the public sector, gobble up these spending, they start to call the shots. And we're starting to see this with some of the billionaire class throwing their weight around in domestic politics and in global politics as well. Mm-hmm. So it is of utmost urgent priority that we get our economic houses in order and deliver material gains for the working class, or else we will fall to a more isolated world governed by authoritarians that also do not deliver to working people.
So this is one of the clearest arguments that she's made, right? She argues that the extreme levels of income inequality create social instability. That makes sense. When corporations become so large that they rival governments in influence, democratic systems get weakened. When people feel economically trapped, they become more open to leaders who promise dramatic change, which is what Donald Trump did. That's how he got people to listen to him. I'll turn down gas prices day one. I'll make the food go down day one. People believe that. This is not a partisan statement. Historically, economic instability has often preceded political instability. In plain terms, she is saying this: if wages do not keep up with the cost, if housing becomes unaffordable, if healthcare remains out of reach for people, and if billionaires appear to shape policy more than the voters do, then the anger is going to build. This is where we are right now. That anger does not disappear. It looks for a political outlet. And you guys, a lot of people found it with Donald Trump, even though he was the wrong vessel. In the United States, that outlet has often taken the form of populist movements on both the right and the left. For a lot of Americans who watch this, who listen to her, the takeaway is simple. Economic policy is not just about money. It's about the health of democracy itself. Now, let's look at what she says about President Trump and our allies.
Sure. I'll start last to first. I think this is a moment where we are seeing our presidential administration tear apart the transatlantic partnership, rip up every democratic norm, and, really calling into question, as was mentioned by David Carney at the World Economic Forum, the rules-based order that we have, or question mark, do we have? And so I think one of the reasons why, not just myself, but many of our colleagues here, in fact, many Democrats that are here as well, is because we want to tell a larger story, that what is happening is indeed very grave. And we are in a new era, domestically and globally. There have been many leaders who've said we will go back. And I think we have to recognize that we are in a new day and in a new time. But that does not mean that the majority of Americans are ready to walk away from a rules-based order and that we're ready to walk away from our commitment to democracy. I think what we identify is that in a rules-based order, hypocrisy is vulnerability.
See, this is where her message shifts from domestic economics to global leadership. She told the European allies that the current administration is weakening long-standing alliances and challenging the rule-based international order. She framed this moment as a turning point, not just a temporary disagreement. What she conveyed to Europe was that there are Americans who remain committed to NATO, international cooperations, and democratic institutions. She was drawing a contrast between her vision of America and President Trump's approach. That is a calculated move on her part. On the global stage, she has positioned herself as aligning with traditional Western alliances and skepticism of isolationism. For a lot of Americans, this has consequence. If the United States steps back from global leadership, Europe will recalibrate. If the United States signals unpredictability, allies will hedge their bets. That affects trade, defense, cooperation, and America's influence. Is she a strong presidential candidate? Some people may say. There are strengths and weaknesses to consider. Her strengths include clarity of message. She connects economic struggle to political instability in a way that many voters understand. She does not shy away from criticizing her own party's past decisions, which can build the credibility that people need. She is comfortable speaking on international platforms and articulating a worldview that links domestic and global policy. Her weaknesses are political reality. I mean, her proposals, including wealth taxes and aggressive corporate regulation, remain controversial among moderate voters and business interests. She energizes supporters deeply, but she also energizes the opposition. They can't stand her over there on the right. But if she would run for president, her path would depend on whether the electorate prioritize economic restructuring and inequality reform over ideological caution. In a divided country, that calculation becomes complicated. So how does this affect America? This conversation in Munich was not abstract. It was about the future of democracy in Western nations. If the United States does not address economic inequality, public trust will continue to erode. They have to address the inequities that we have in our country. If the political parties fail to deliver tangible improvements in people's lives, like Donald Trump has failed to do, populist movements will continue to gain traction, which she's trying to get. At the same time, if America withdraws from alliances or weakens democratic norms, global stability shifts. Europe listens closely to what American leaders say at conferences like this, okay? AOC's messages was the inequality feeds instability and that abandoning alliances accelerates global disorder. Whether one agrees with her policies or not, that was the framework she was presenting. So what stood out most was not her tone, it was her acknowledgement that working Americans felt unheard. Populism does not begin with speeches, it begins with frustration. If leaders want to reduce political extremism, they must reduce economic insecurity. If they want to defend democracy abroad, they must maintain stability at home. The larger question is not simply whether populism is good or bad. The real question is whether institutions can respond effectively to the grievances that created it. That's the crosswords in which we find ourselves today. Please like, share, and subscribe. We are trying to get to 10,000 subs, and we will be back with more content.